Hey, this is PxP, artist discussions about process and practice. PxP is brought to you by the City of Chico Arts Commission, serving our Chico community through arts advocacy and partnerships that promote our community's artistic and cultural development, and the 1078 Gallery, a nonprofit, volunteer-run organization offering exciting exhibitions of contemporary and experimental artworks in visual, musical, literary, film, and performance mediums. This is Episode 3 with Micah Black and David Sutherland. Joining us for this discussion are two multimedia artists, David Sutherland and Micah Black. And I wanted to start our conversation by taking a little time travel back to early 2000s, or 2005 through like 2010. It's about 15 years ago. That's when I became aware of you both as artists. And that was sort of through the DIY kind of gallery scene where there was lots of house shows. The Crux Gallery was happening, Ray Gallery, other sort of like gallery startups and collectives were being formed during that time. So let's travel back to that time. And Dave, what were you doing during that time? I remember you just being everywhere, performance artist, doing gallery shows, you were doing fashion stuff.
So that was, super prolific for me. I had gotten a job at the university doing graphic design. And so I was able to take classes for really cheap, like $15 a unit. So I basically was taking all art classes. And I had a class in, assemblage, surrealism, Dada. That was definitely a class that when I first saw assemblage work, my mind was blown. And I became a member on the board of the 1078 Gallery back then when it was on 5th Street. We had a show at the gallery. It was called the Art House. And me and 4 other artists locked ourselves into the gallery. Basically, we're like, okay, anyone that wants to join us can. We're staying here for the weekend. And we just made art in the gallery and had a big party, like a big... Nice. It was kind of a blowout. We had a DJ and the cops showed up. So there was that, and then lots of house parties. After that is when we started the Crux.
And Micah, you kind of stumbled into that world as like brand new young adult.
Let's see. At the time I was really into just doing graffiti and DJing and things like that. And that's where I was in my life, and like just sketching and my sketchbook and all of that. And then I graduated high school and then got more into it. But before that, my sister actually was moving out of her house with her roommate. And since they had nothing in their house, they decided to have an art show. And so it was completely empty and just full of art. A group of my friends went there, and that was the first time I saw like grown adults that were like, I made this painting, I'm hanging it on the wall for everybody to see, like in Chico. And I was like, oh, that's a thing? Like, wow.
That was us. We were there. That was when me and Micah first met.
And then so Dave had some work there, and he also put this giant piece of paper on the wall. It was like the thickest paper I've ever seen, and it was massive, and just brought like, I don't know, a lot of art supplies. And we just hung out at this party, and I just made art on this giant piece of paper, and then looked at his work, and I was like, wow, like this is really cool. He just found these really neat pieces. Collage. There was even one piece where it was I think it's just like a cork board, like a really big one, and he painted on that. So I was like, wow, you can just like find things and make art on it. And being like really into graffiti art at that time, I was like, oh, like this makes sense to me, and this is kind of what I'm already doing. I'm just not like putting it in a studio setting and like really working on something. And so that was a huge influence on me. And then a good friend of mine, we ended up moving into that apartment that my sister lived in and did the art show. And Dave left some of his artwork in that apartment. So I was like really lucky. I was like, cool, I get to hang out with this art for like a month or something in my new house. So that was huge. And then I had my first show at Naked Lounge. And after that, like, I don't know what, maybe a couple years later or something like that, when I actually started making artwork and I was really into it and finding found objects and just like putting a crap ton of paint on it, like that's what I was into. I was just like, I want to find stuff and like put it together and put a lot of paint on top of it. And so, yeah, I had a show at Naked Lounge. And then I had a show with other people at the Crux. Yeah, when I was on Park. So you guys, oh, actually no. Actually before that, I did the window show. So that was the first actual like art piece I made for, I guess, an art space or gallery space. Yeah.
How old were you?
Probably 19, 20 maybe. Yeah, around there.
Yeah, the Crux was a really magical place. I remember, and I still think Chico kind of maintains that spirit, but it's kind of like whatever you can dream and however many people are around you that you can convince to do your thing, you can do a thing, you know? Yeah, lots of spontaneous collectives and weird theater performances. And let's go back like a little further and let's talk about creative origins. So I'm always curious what sort of circumstances or events that happened in an artist's life that kind of like got you into exploring the creative arts. So Dave, like early on in life, what are some things you think that were formative for you and kind of pushed you in the direction of being an artist?
Early on, well, I've always loved drawing, so much so that like I would do projects for other people. You know, like they would need a cover for like, you know, their book report or something and come to me and be like, you know, Dave, will you draw me, you know, a picture?
Did you get paid?
No, although I did in elementary school, I sold my first piece of art. I think it was like I made like $10 or something. It was in second grade. Yeah, but that was pretty cool.
What was the drawing of?
Oh gosh, I think it was the skating rink. I grew up in Scotts Valley in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and that was like the thing. Like the skating rink was the place to be.
Dang.
And so yeah, I had
cool.
like people skating, and their hair was like going back, and there was, you know, like motion lines coming off of their skates.
Going full speed.
You know, it was kind of a big deal. We would go for walks on the beach, and I loved finding trash. I had to walk to school when I was in like second grade, and I would just find all sorts of random stuff like on the side of the road in the gutter. And I had a little spot in my attic up in the dorm. There was like dormers, and I would put all my objects up there and just kind of like look at them and rearrange them and think about where they came from, like a little micro museum kind of world. I don't know. I've always been sort of fascinated with the things that people discard. When I was in high school, I was very much into like being cool. Being cool took a lot of my energy. And so I felt like it kind of sucked the life out of my art. Like I would just draw like, you know, basically demons, like really like buff demons.
Yeah.
And like big breasted like women. Like it was, it was bad. Like it was, I mean, I thought it was
I love
cool.
knowing this about you.
Yeah, like it didn't make me feel good, like at all. But yeah, my art went downhill like in high school.
Well, maybe, I mean, you were still keeping up your chops. You're still developing skill. You're drawing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love all these vignettes. I loved imagining all these different spaces that you were creating in and all these like these formative moments. That was a fun journey. I love learning all these things about you. I've known you so long.
That's a good journey.
That was a good journey. Yeah. All right, Micah, how about your journey?
I don't totally know where it comes from. Maybe it was something I just kind of like did, and my mom would just kind of feed it, like, oh, here's a coloring book, or here's this thing. But I don't know. At a young age, I moved to Chico when I was 4. My dad passed away, and we lived in the Bay Area, so we moved to Chico after that. And then of course, started going to school soon after that, and was kind of like a crazy kid, pretty angry because of my dad passing. I got really lucky, but there were teachers that actually were open to pay attention to me and realize like, oh, this kid is pretty crazy, so we should give him something to do. And then they realized like I loved just building things. Like, it was crazy about Legos. I loved Ninja Turtles, so I was always trying to draw Ninja Turtles like all the time. And like even on myself, I just like, oh, I got a tattoo. And so I was like one of those kids that just draw on everything, always moving, always fidgetive, like totally ADD kid. And so creativity was always kind of an outlet to like slow myself down and like be in a space where I felt maybe I could just not think of the stuff and also be in control of what I'm doing. And I had a teacher that was really into it, helping me be creative. And so she like made it a point to be like, hey, like you're gonna have this day, or like for 30 minutes you can play with Legos or something if you be a good kid. And so I would do that, and then she would display the things I would make in the office at the school. So it was like the first time I don't know, got to show.
That was your first gallery show.
Yeah, to show my stuff off. And maybe that just made a huge impression on me. And I felt like I was accomplishing something, because my home life was really a wreck. So I knew I could go home and like still be creative and like just do that. And my mom was always supportive. Whatever, she's like, whatever you want to do, I love you, just do it. And so I've always kind of like did my own thing. And so I think I found art to be like, this is my thing. And then later on, I got like super into comic books, and I was like crazy about the X-Men. So as a kid and through like elementary school to junior high, I was just like constantly trying to draw X-Men, and then like futuristic cars. I got really into futuristic cars. And then in high school, and my brother's friends were graffiti artists and like super into rollerblading, because that was the thing to do. And like, I don't know, late 90s, 2000s, they would put on raves. So I started going to raves, and then noticed that a few of them were artists and were always like writing on stuff, or like in their notebooks, they would have like these cool rollerblader figures. And I was like, I want to mimic that. Like, that's the coolest style I've ever seen. And then it led to me finding this notebook that was full of just like graffiti letters. And I would always be like, what does this say? Like, this is crazy. I have to decipher this. And I started just mimicking what was in there, trying to find my own style and all of that. And then I started looking at magazines. And when Chico had Tower, and I would go to Tower magazine, I'd just sit there for hours and look at all the magazines. And I could never afford them, so I would just look at them and then put them back. Yeah, I just kept on, I think, just experimenting, being creative, and being like trying to be in that mindset. And I really liked, I think I leaned towards street art, quote unquote, or graffiti, because I love the mystery of it. Like, who did what? There's a drama going on. And just kept on doing that until I saw Dave's work at my sister's house. And then I was like, oh, wait, like now I can like take what I've been doing, my interests, and also like bring it in to my house. And like the things I would normally just tag on or something and leave on the street, I can like bring in. And then I really love the idea if I found an object, it used to have a life, weathered because of something, and it has its own character to it, its own energy to it. And so I was like, I can implement that, and it means something to me. I don't know why, but it means something.
Is it time for a break? Got it.
All
Got it.
right.
Okay. Let's take a 15 minute break. If you would like to insert a question into the discussion, there's pieces of paper on that yellow table kind of by the door. So if you heard something you're curious about and you want to ask a little bit more, maybe it's the rollerblade gang.
Yeah. Ask questions. Do it. I dare you.
You can write
Please,
down your question
please.
and we'll insert it in. So. Okay, let's get going.
Yeah, let's talk some more.
Let's talk some more.
More talking. Woo!
Talking.
All right, and we're back. I want to talk about your assemblage pieces. We're sitting in the gallery in the middle of an installation that is a collaborative show between Micah and David. There are a lot of sculptural, like assemblage pieces up, and we were kind of talking about that earlier, kind of a formative moment. And Micah, you were saying how this is kind of like full circle for you, where you kind of entered the art scene that fateful night as your sister's empty apartment. But let's talk about assemblage. So I'm always curious, like what's going on in your mind when you're selecting pieces. So see something on the ground, you're at a thrift store, there's a free pile on the side of the road. What's your thought process? What about that object calls to you and you must take it with you?
For me, it's color. And I'll be like, oh, that's really good eyes. Those are really good antenna. But then a lot of times it's just the piece. Like there's something about it. Find beautiful things and put them together with other beautiful things and create a new reality. It's like, it's a very simple concept, but it's something that I feel is like completely ingrained in me. It's just an inner aesthetic, like, because people have given me stuff and I'm just like, they're like, oh, you could make art out of this. It's a really personal thing. So yeah, I'm just like, I found today, I've been going on these meditation walks and these things, I'm just walking around and they just pop out. They want me to take them and make art with them.
So Micah, can you describe how you select an object?
Like time and place.
Okay.
Sometimes they're like little souvenirs. Because instead of going to the store and like buying something, I get something like, oh, this had a life to it. I know that it has a story, and I like that. So I don't know, like for example, I went to Japan and I like found like a broken piano on the side of the road, and I was like already like, I'm not from here. Everything looks neat and amazing, and then I'm like, why is there something broken here that's kind of like out of the ordinary? In a way, Japan's pretty clean. And I was like, I'm totally gonna take some keys. And I took these piano keys that I've had for years and like finally used a couple in some artworks, like over here on the wall. And so the things I find, I kind of keep them kind of for a long time. I decide to part ways with my stuff because I don't have room for it or something like that.
It's deeply satisfying to use something that you've hoarded
Yeah.
for years.
Yeah.
So what's in the workshop? What kind of tools are you using to create assemblage? So I'm assuming you got like a jigsaw and epoxy and you have to have all manner of, what's your approach to figuring out how to make all these things stick together?
To make work like this, I see them as a puzzle piece. So I'll like spend weeks kind of reorganizing stuff constantly, like every day, looking at it and then moving it. And then what feeling am I getting when I'm making this? Kind of want to make like an atmosphere in a way, this vibe that it has. So I do that first, and then I'm like, okay, I'm happy with this. And then I just glue, nails. I'll make a frame for the back to put everything on.
And I love the way that when you're just like looking at these works of art, there's just so many like mini moments. There's so many little compositions within compositions and just all the little details that you've added in. And then something I like about your work, Dave, is like just finding all the faces. They're so engaging in that way. And so how do you build a face?
Well, yeah, I do a lot of what Micah's talking about. I'll take pictures of them just because they change around a lot.
Yeah.
And when you
move
'cause-
one thing and you'll forget.
Yeah, and it's
So you have to
it's a completely
document,
different
like every
piece.
move in a way.
Yeah, so I'll take a picture to make sure that I'm putting everything back together the way that I had it. Yeah, it's just a lot of moving items around and getting a sensation from them. Yeah, my pieces are like, they're mahakala. They're like masks. I consider them like dragon masks. And it was really cool working with Micah because when he came up,
So
yeah, I kinda-
talk about your collaboration. So you approached
How did this
Micah, you
happen?
pitched this.
It kind of, I think it took me a little bit to realize that Micah was actually here to stay. He's been in Oakland, San Francisco, and he's been super active down there in Oakland, San Francisco. And then he came back up and started the Chico Print Party.
Yeah.
And then he was at the Chico, he invited me to Chico Print Party, and he was there with his girlfriend, and she was like gonna move, and I'm like, oh, Micah's probably gonna move too. And then he didn't.
I didn't.
And then he's still here, and I'm like,
Yeah.
it just kind of dawned on me, like, Micah, we should have a show. Yeah, so we had a meeting at Micah's house, super cute little house over in the Avs. And I was like, are you hungry? I'm going to bring lunch, veggie chow mein. And he has a little back patio, and we sat out there. And we talked for a bit. So then we opened our fortune cookies.
Yeah, and then we had some fortune cookies, and then Dave was like, "Oh, here it is. Like, what does your fortune cookie say?" And we read our fortune cookies, and that's how we came up with the name for the show. That connected to kind of what we were already talking about.
It was very auspicious.
Yeah, we knew we wanted to do an installation of the gallery from kind of the get-go in a way. We both felt that, like we needed that in the space.
We had
to
different ideas.
connect. Yeah, we had other ideas, and then I guess for myself, I was like, I kind of knew, I was like, Dave has this, he has a vision, and it's gonna work out, and I believe in him, and something's gonna come out of it. And I was like, whatever it is, I'm like okay with it, and it's gonna be great, and I can add my own little bit of flavor to it when we get there.
I love that there's like a balance of like, careful planning and lots of prep work, and then you're still open to the spontaneous, you're letting the spirit move you and you're following.
Maybe we both make our work like that.
Yeah.
Like I'm very structured, but then I want there to be play within it, and then I'll change it. Like maybe I have a vision, but I still want the objects or whatever I'm painting to kind of guide me, or shapes or something change. Whatever I'm feeling and thinking while I'm painting, it'll just kind of like, oh, wait, I need to do this.
That's a beautiful idea to aspire to in your artistic practice, right? That like the balance between control and exercising your skill to reach an outcome, but then also being open to the play and the discovery, and then whatever else might come along in that process. We have one more question. We're going to wrap it up from a mystery audience person. Who is your all-time favorite Chico graffiti artist?
All-time favorite. Some graffiti lore, I guess. There was a crew here that was the CIK crew, City's Illest crew. And they'd always make the best pieces.
It wasn't City's Illest Kid?
It could be Kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could be Kid, actually.
Okay.
I
That's
thought
what I
it was
always thought it was.
What did their pieces look like? What was their style?
They just wrote CIK a lot.
But really good.
It was, always
Yeah,
super
really
clean,
good.
really clean.
I agree.
What was cool about Chico is every year with different Chico State students and then people that would travel through there'd be like a different wave of artists. So then I would always pay attention to all the new graph. There's one guy who wrote Effect, A-F-E. Maybe it was a K or an X or something, but always liked his style, or their style. I don't know.
You'll never know who they are.
Yeah, and that's what's great. I love that. But part of it is to find out who they are if you really are interested. I don't necessarily have a favorite. Yeah,
Caesar one is mine.
for sure. He was the first like big stencil artist I saw in Chico, and I thought that was really cool for Chico being a small town.
Something I just love about Chico and the stories I'm hearing from the artists through these conversations is just, there's these generations of artists that come through and inspire the next one. And I hope that's what we're doing in part here is we are documenting some of these great stories and some of these great ideas and hopefully pass that along to some younger artists and keep the culture going in Chico because it's really special.
I'm super glad that you're doing this.
Yeah,
Very grateful.
This is really great.
All right,
project.
Thanks everyone for being here.
Thank
today.
you. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks again to the 1078 Gallery for holding space for these conversations. Thank you, Aaron Wade and Becky Snow, for event support. Thank you, Kurt Lind, our live sound engineer. And the theme song is an excerpt from Future Fantasy by Eric Elliott.